see you guys in the dark.
So this happened about 6 years ago. My best friend had moved a couple towns over, and with our busy work schedules, we couldn't hang out as much. We made a habit of getting together at least once a week and going on a hike just to shoot the shit and catch up. So that day rolls around, and we decided to go to a trail in a neighboring town. This town was considered a very wealthy area, and therefore very safe. This is important because it's the main reason why our guard was low, and probably why we didn't see the apparent red flags of the situation. In order to get to the trail, you had to drive through a park entrance. This was the only way in or out. As you drive through the entrance, there is a parking lot on the right side. You keep driving, and there is a baseball field to the left, and about 100 yards further, there is another small parking lot, which is where we parked. From the parked car to the start of the trail was about a 50-yard walk. There were a couple of parked cars there, and it was probably around 5 p.m. It was summertime, so we weren't worried about it getting dark anytime soon. But of course, we lost track of time, and decided to head back once we noticed it had gotten pretty dark. I just want to note that nothing felt strange during this hike. I never felt uneasy, or felt like I was being watched, or anything like that, even as we were hiking out of the woods in complete darkness. We finally made it to the entrance of the trail, and I look over to see my friend's car is the only one left in the entire lot. We start making our way towards the car, and I hear very light rustling near some trees a couple feet to the left of us. My friend and I were mid-conversation, and I knew he hadn't heard it because he kept talking, but I kept looking over my shoulder as we got further from the trees. We were still about halfway to the car when I saw a silhouette hide quickly behind a tree. At this point, I looked at my friend, who was still unaware that I had heard and just seen something. He said in the calmest voice possible, "Hey man, don't freak out, but someone is in that brush over there, looking at us. Let's run to your car on 3. Believe me, I was scared shitless, but I didn't want whoever that was to realize that we were aware that they were there. As I count to 3, our walk turns into a power walk, and then to a full-on sprint when this thing comes out from behind the tree, and I hear the footsteps of someone running right at us. To this day, I don't know why we stopped running and turned around to face this stranger, but this man, dressed in all black clothing, pulls out a flashlight and points it at our faces. He comes closer very cautiously, as if we were going to do something to him. When he's about arm's length away, he tells us that he's a cop. First red flag was the hiding in the bushes part, watching us for I don't know how long. Second red flag was the fact that not once did he ever announce himself as a cop until he got real close. At this point, we were right next to my friend's car in an empty parking lot. Not a single police car or any other car in sight. Not only that, but this guy was wearing a black vest and black slacks and had no type of badge or anything that could indicate he was a police officer. He pulls out a small notepad and asks for our names, which we give to him. I know how stupid that was. Believe me. At this point, I don't know if we're being fucked with by some random guy, or if this is an actual cop because he tells us to step away from the car, and he's going to check for drugs. We'll let him search the car. My friend smoked cigarettes, and the guy made a deal about the butts in the ashtray. Me and my friend are sitting on the curb waiting for this guy to finish searching the car. Not gonna lie, at this point, it seems like a big joke, and we almost laugh in this guy's face. It went from being creepy as all hell to feeling annoyed that my time was being wasted. Anyway, this guy gets out of the car, and I take off my shoe to get a couple pebbles out of it from the hike earlier, and this maniac rushes at me with his flashlight and says, "Why are you doing that? What's in your shoe?" I stand up immediately with my shoe in my hand and tell him to relax. It's just pebbles. Now what he did next made my hair on the back of my neck stand up. I'm getting chills just playing it in my mind as I write this. To recap, this guy was wearing a black shirt with a black vest and black slacks with black shoes and nothing else. No badge, no gun, no walkie-talkie or even a radio. He turns around very quickly away from me, takes a couple of steps, and pretends to call for backup on the radio that cops have attached to their collars. Me and my friend exchange looks, and we're both thinking we need to get the hell out of here. He insists that he has to call a canine unit to come and sniff out the car for drugs. At this point, we're arguing with this guy, telling him how he's wasting everyone's time, and everything is so unnecessary. My friend lights a cigarette, and we sat there for what must have been at least 20 minutes, just looking at each other. Of course, the canine unit never shows up. The man walks a few feet further away from us, and again pretends to be on the radio with someone. He comes back and tells us that the other officers are busy and we can leave. In my head, I'm thinking, what the fuck is going on? This is the most absolutely bizarre situation I have ever been in. We slowly get in the car, and I never take my eyes off this guy until we pull out and drive away. He just stood there in the empty parking lot, looking at his notepad. On our way out, we scan the other lot in that park. Not a single car in sight. By the end of it all, my friend and I were more annoyed about the whole situation than creeped out. But we always thought, what if it wasn't the two of us that he had stopped? Maybe he sized us up and realized he couldn't take both of us, so he played the role so he wouldn't give himself away. We also thought that maybe he was a rookie cop on a crappy night shift park patrol, but it was just way too bizarre for it to be true. But anyway, to the creepy-ass fake cop from that hiking trail, don't ever cross our paths ever again. During my junior year of high school, two of my friends and I, we're all females, were hanging out at a local park. It was just after 10 o'clock on a Saturday, so we were just sitting on one of the jungle gyms, playing soft music and chatting quietly. I had visited this particular park a lot when I was a kid, so I knew the layout pretty well, and it was only a 20-minute walk from my house, so I felt comfortable there. My friends and I had been talking about random personal stuff for 30 or so minutes when a big, black SUV pulled into the parking lot. We noticed it, but really didn't pay as much attention to it as we should have. Suddenly, almost without warning, a man stepped out of the van and started walking directly towards us. He was tall, wearing a plain black shirt with the sleeves rolled up to the elbows, and a thick, almost policeman-like vest. A lot more professional than any fishing vest. The park was on a river, so fishermen were common in this area. What might have been either a belt buckle or a badge was visible on his waist. We weren't sure which it was. All three of us, instead of running as we should have, froze and just tried to avoid looking at him. My friend whispered that he was probably a cop, as there was technically a curfew for minors in my town, and we were playing music that could have annoyed the neighbors. Instead of speaking to us, he just started to do pull-ups on the monkey bars directly next to us, grunting loudly as he did so. When I snuck a glance in his direction, he was staring right at me. The second he and I made contact, I pushed my friends down the slide, and we bolted out of there. Thinking intelligently for the first time that night, we hid out in a local grocery store, locking ourselves in the bathroom for a solid 10 minutes as we freaked out. As we debated whether or not to call our parents, I realized that I had left my phone in the jungle gym at the park. Absolutely fucking perfect. I told my friends that I couldn't find my phone, and we collectively decided that getting murdered was better than facing my parents. Yes, we were acting like the dumb teens that get killed first in the movies. We huddled together, the flashlight glowing on the one phone that wasn't dead or missing, and marched back into the park. The van had moved from being basically on the sidewalk to actually in a parking spot, and one of the fire pits along the river was lit, though there was no one sitting around it that we could see. My friends kept watch as I climbed the ladder to look for my phone. It wasn't there. We scoured the wood chips around the jungle gym, trying to stay in the light of one of the two street lamps along the sidewalk. Suddenly, my friend had the brilliant idea to call my phone. She did so, and the screen lit up right where the van had been. What the hell? All of us were horror movie buffs, so our brains were in the worst-case scenario mode as we moved as slowly as possible towards my still buzzing phone. The call ended, and the screen went dark, which is when we finally noticed it. A person at the campfire running towards us almost silently. Needless to say, we all screamed. I was close enough to my phone that I snatched it from the ground and took off like a Usain Bolt, chasing after my friends while my heart was beating like crazy. As we neared the bridge leading to one of the roads next to the park, a vintage-looking red car roared to the life and parked directly in front of the bridge, blocking the exit leading to my friend's house, only a couple of minutes away. The lights blared right down the bridge, so I couldn't tell how many people were inside or if anyone ever got out. We changed course and ran down the sidewalk towards the grocery store from before. I spared a glance behind us and saw the man from before, standing just outside of the light from the street lamp, staring at me. When we finally arrived at the grocery store, I felt like vomiting. Instead of calling the police, as any sane person would, we holed up in the bathroom on the second floor and freaked the fuck out. I checked my camera roll, but he hadn't taken any pictures, and my phone seemed fine. I got a new one that summer. This took place in late February, so if he did do anything to my phone, I don't have to worry about it now. I hope. Since that day, I have never told another soul what happened in that park, other than my self-defense teacher, whose lessons I began taking shortly after this event. I started carrying a pocket knife with me everywhere I go, even though I know it probably won't help me if something like that happened again. I've never been back to that park, and I stopped talking to my two friends, as they were bad influences anyways. So, creepy fake cop and friends from the park, let's not cross paths ever again. So last night, I was working some overtime, and I was driving home at 3 a.m., a little tired, but obviously sober. It was dark on the freeway, but I knew that stretch of freeway very well. I admit, maybe I was speeding. I was eager to go home when I saw the flashing lights and siren behind me. I cursed, but I was not alarmed. It's not the first time that I've been pulled over. In all honesty, I get a speeding ticket maybe every 4 to 5 years. My last ticket was 6 years ago, so I guess I was due. I didn't see any cop cars before this, but thought, oh, I bet they were undercover or something. And since I was between exits and the hour of night, I thought it was better to pull off the freeway rather than the shoulder, despite the fact the shoulder is not too bad. I was less than half a mile from the exit. The car was tailgating and aggressive, coming up close to my bumper, honking, but no loudspeakers. So I thought the officers were annoyed or mad. I still had my right turn signal on, but I started fumbling for my phone to call 911 and let them know I wasn't evading arrest or something. By this point, it was maybe 2 or 3 minutes. I didn't think that was unreasonable, but I am not a cop and don't know how they would feel about this. I turned on my interior dome lights so I could be illuminated. I am a short Asian woman with Coke bottle thick glasses. I look fairly innocuous, and I hoped they would be put at ease. I still could not really see them because of the lights. Anyway, the very next exit, if I turned right, is a police station, so I turned right, pulled into the police station, shut off my car, and rolled down my windows. Except, the car kept going after shutting off its lights and siren. I waited for a couple of minutes, but I left. I was a little freaked out, but thought maybe there was an emergency, even though it made no sense why they would shut off their lights and sirens. My thought was that not a real cop car, but I thought I was being paranoid. Then, when I went home, I pulled into my garage. About 20 minutes later, while I was in the shower, my husband came in, a little worried, and said that someone knocked on our door, and when he yelled, "Who the fuck is it?" nobody responded. Then he looked through our peephole. No one. He looked around and saw no one there. That was the first time that I really got worried. It was really unnerving. Anyway, that's it. Edit. I never got to my phone to call 911 while I was driving. I was digging through my purse to find it, but gave up as I hit the exit. Then when I pulled into the PD, I thought about going inside, but thought, well, if that was a real cop, I'm not going to blow all my OT today on a ticket. Then I weighed how long it would take me to talk to someone with how tired I was, and how I just wanted to go home, see my husband, peek on our kids, shower, and go to bed. Then that's why I left without talking to anyone. I started the day at 8:30 a.m., and it was now 3:30 a.m., so nearly 24 hours. It worried me, but it didn't weird me out until my husband told me about the knock. I called today and actually spoke to an officer I had worked with before. He has a very unusual name, so that is why I knew it was him, but I don't think he remembers me at all. But I mentioned that we'd worked together before, and that I was DCFS, social worker. So he sounded a little bit more concerned, even though I was coming home from work and not working when this happened. So it was probably not work-related. But he told me it was also during shift change, so he told me to call back later. When I did, I couldn't get through, but because this was an officer I worked with before, I had his email, which is just a serial number, so I emailed him, and hopefully he'll guide me. Incidentally, I emailed a detective in another station for a police report on one of my cases during work hours. We use him a lot, so he knows me well. He'd asked me how my weekend was, so I responded, well, actually, and emailed him. I told him what happened, and he told me that was pretty weird, but he couldn't get involved directly because it happened in the first PD's area, not his. But he would tell someone at the first station to talk to me if I didn't get through by tomorrow, since he knew a few guys there. I think I may try highway patrol tomorrow. No one seemed alarmed, just a little concerned, but not especially, if that makes sense. More just thinking it was weird. I also think that unless there are cameras in the front of the PD that went onto the street, it'll be pretty useless. I never really got a good look at anything. The flashing lights behind me were too bright for me to see a license plate. Too dark that time out at night anyways. I wouldn't even be able to say for certain that it had a license plate. All I knew that it was not a cop car, and that when I pulled in waiting for my ticket, I looked in my rear view. The car zoomed past the entry driveway, and it was a brown car. Up until then, I wasn't alarmed or worried about my safety. I had only pulled off the freeway because it was so late and dark. I thought that it would be safest in the road safety sense. Not my personal safety, because I had genuinely assumed it was a real officer until then. I get a lot of people have had bad experiences with cops, but since I have a regular contact with the police for work, I guess I may have a higher than average trust for them. Sometimes they're jerks, but never threatening, so I don't have a fear law enforcement the way other people do. The fake cop possibility never came across my mind until the car drove away. And I never thought about a real cop raping and murdering me despite having read news articles about both scenarios happening. This is a story that my friend told me that happened to her older sister. She goes to a large, private religious university in Utah. She was staying in an apartment not too far from campus with 3 other girls. The semester had just started, and 2 of the 3 girls were asleep. My friend's sister was on her phone sitting in the living room when she heard what sounded like footsteps outside the window behind her. She listened closely and dismissed it as a stray cat or a dog. Soon after, she heard a thud against the dining room wall coming from the outside, and heard what sounded like muffled whispering. My friend's sister is an excellent marksman, so she decided to scare whoever was outside off by opening the blinds, turning on the lights, and grabbing the shotgun she kept on the mantel and pointing it at the window while screaming for the other girls to wake up. She saw a short man wearing all black and a ski mask running away. The cops came shortly after, and she filed a report. Fast forward to a few weeks later. My friend's sister kept seeing a small white truck with tinted black windows following her. She dismisses it as her imagination, but it freaks her out a little bit. One weekend, her roommates have gone out of town, so it's just her by herself. Right as she's trying to fall asleep, she hears a pounding at her door. She bolts to the door and looks through the peephole to see a cop standing there. "Who are you?" she asks. "I'm a cop," says the guy. "Open up, it's the law," he yells maniacally. My friend is starting to call bullshit, but she's scared of disobeying him if he actually is a cop. "Why are you here so late?" she asks him. "Remember a few weeks ago when that guy tried to break into your house? I have an update on him." My friend is freaking out now, because why would a cop come try to talk to her about the case so late, and by himself? He wasn't even the officer who helped her file out the report. "Show me your badge," she demanded. He pulled it out and shoved it into the peephole, and my friend sighed a breath of relief. Right as she was unlocking the door, she glanced down his legs and noticed this cop had very elevated platform boots, a machete on his utility belt, and the name on his uniform didn't match the name of his badge. "You're not a freaking cop," she yelled at him. The fake cop screamed and started slamming on the door, saying, "I am an officer of the law, and you will obey me. Open up, police!" She called 911 and held her weight behind the front door, clutching her shotgun until the cops arrived. The guy was long gone by then, but he left behind his cap, which was a prop from a party store. The day after this, my friend broke her lease, moved to a new city in Utah, transferred schools, and bought a Doberman to keep her company. They never caught the guy, so hopefully he never does this to another girl ever again. Some nights, my son and I drive his father to work so I can visit family as they live close by. It was around 9:30 at night on a highway in Northern California. My son had just fallen asleep in the car on the way to his father's work, which is a craft store. We were in a 2-lane road in which it would eventually turn into one. As it was turning to one, he slowed down, letting me pass. As I passed him, he turned on his lights, but no sirens went off. The car was all black, and I couldn't even see who the person looked like. I pulled over, getting my insurance and license out. Did I do something wrong, I thought? Well, he let me pass, and it was a passing zone after all. As he was walking towards my car, I noticed something. He had no uniform. He was just wearing all black. He almost looked like a shadow, though I didn't question it at first. I now realized how much danger I could have been. I showed him my license and asked if I did anything wrong. He looks down at it for a solid minute, then hands it back. I looked at him again and asked, "What's your badge number? What department are you from?" He didn't reply back. He stared into me, then the back of my car where my son was sleeping. Then he walked off. Started his car, and then he left. I was crying and shaking. I had so many questions about this. Now that it's been a few hours since it's happened, I have so many more questions. Was my son the reason he didn't do more? Was he a sex trafficker? What would he have done had my son not been there? Where can you even buy cop lights similar to the real ones that are used on police cars? If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.